My life took an unexpected and delightful turn the day I met James. Before him, my world had been consumed by the never-ending cycle of corporate crisis. But stepping into James's life was like entering a world of sweetness, quite literally, at his family-owned candy shop, Sweet Sanctuary. Here, love and confections blended effortlessly, and I soon found myself managing the finances of this charming little store. "Good morning, love," James would greet me, his smile lighting up the room as I stepped into the deliciously fragrant shop. Even on days when tension lingered in the air, his warmth was a constant reminder of the new joy in my life. "Morning," I'd reply, sorting through the usual stack of bills, a task I had become quite adept at handling. "Sales are up this month. That new chocolate line is really taking off." James would give a nonchalant shrug, though I could sense the subtle pressure behind his casual demeanor. "Yeah, well, that's all you," he'd joke. "Mom still sees me as the candy guy." I laughed along, though I could tell there was more beneath the surface. Just as we were settling into the rhythm of our morning, his mother, Patricia, would burst through the door, all smiles and enthusiasm. "James, my boy, you outdone yourself. The store looks fabulous," she'd exclaim, giving him an overzealous pat on the back. Her gaze would then shift to me, and her smile would tighten just slightly. "Karen, still playing shopkeeper, I see." I'd offer a polite sigh and respond, "Good morning, Patricia. Yes, playing shopkeeper is what keeps us in the black." Patricia would wave my comment away dismissively. Numbers, Karen. You should leave that to the accountants and help my son with the real business." Before I could respond, James would step in, his tone firm yet gentle. "Mom, Karen's doing more than fine. We're doing great because she's got a business head," he'd say, wrapping an arm around me in a silent but supportive gesture. Patricia, however, wasn't easily deterred. "Well, as long as my boy is happy, I suppose that's what matters," she'd mutter before flouncing off, her presence lingering long after she'd gone. James would squeeze my side apologetically. "Don't let her get to you," he'd murmur. I'd smile weakly, doing my best to push aside the unease. "I'm not. Let's just focus on the shop." And so we did, pouring our hearts into making Sweet Sanctuary not just a candy store, but a slice of paradise. That sense of bliss lasted for a while, until I began noticing troubling signs. Deliveries started coming in, not with ingredients for our confections, but with expensive gadgets bearing eye-popping price tags. One evening, as I locked up the register and eyed a sleek new phone still in its packaging, I couldn't help but ask, "Another package, James?" "That's the new phone I ordered," he replied, his excitement palpable as he ripped open the box. "Top of the line." I raised an eyebrow, concerned. "Don't we have other priorities?" The mixer in the back's been making a strange noise. James brushed off my worries, his attention fixed on the phone. "It's fine, Karen. We've got to treat ourselves too, you know." Part of me wanted to protest, to remind him of our precarious financial situation, but I held back, hoping we could find a balance between indulgence and keeping our dream alive. Still, it wasn't just the phone that bothered me. Patricia, ever the showwoman, regularly flaunted her extravagant purchases, turning Sweet Sanctuary into her personal runway. "Karen, look at this dress," she'd exclaim, twirling in an expensive floral number that was easily worth more than a day's earnings. "Isn't it just darling?" "It's nice," I'd reply, keeping my tone even. "But shouldn't we be saving for that sign outside?" Patricia would dismiss me with a wave, her tone dripping with indifference. "Nonsense. The store is doing wonderfully. James, tell her." James, distracted, would nod absently. "Yeah, we're doing great, Karen. Don't worry so much." But that was exactly my issue. I worried. Every time I checked the financials, the numbers told a different story, one of dwindling profits being eaten up by unnecessary expenses. "We need to be careful," I suggested again that week after reviewing the books. James gave me a look like I'd just suggested selling the store for a one-way ticket to the circus. "Come on, Karen. It's not that bad. You're being stingy," he said, the word stinging more than I wanted to admit. "I'm not being stingy, James. I'm being smart. We need to think about the future of Sweet Sanctuary," I argued. But he seemed uninterested, already absorbed in browsing another site for his next purchase. "You worry too much," he dismissed, barely paying attention. "It'll all work out." Things escalated when Patricia decided we needed extra help. It was a Tuesday, inventory day, and I was organizing a shipment of candy jars when she walked in, arm in arm with a young woman who could not have been more than 20. "Karen, this is Lisa," Patricia announced with a flourish. She's going to help us with the business side of things. I straightened up, wiping my hands on my apron. Nice to meet you, Lisa. But just to clarify, I'm the co-manager here, I said, my voice friendly but firm. Lisa's smile was polite but distant. I've heard a lot about you. I'm excited to be part of the team. Patricia's smug expression told me all I needed to know. She hadn't consulted James about this hire. What exactly will Lisa be assisting with? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Oh, she's going to help with the business side of things. You can only do so much after all, Patricia replied dismissively, her gaze skimming over my inventory sheets. It was then that I knew, for better or worse, the future of Sweet Sanctuary was no longer solely in our hands. I nodded, though a mix of confusion and concern stirred inside me. All right, well, we have a system here, so I'll need to bring her up to speed. It quickly became clear that Lisa's idea of helping was more about observing than actively participating. When I discovered the salary Patricia had approved for her, I was taken aback. James, can we talk? I asked him later in the office. Sure, what's up? He replied, not even glancing up from his computer. It's about Lisa. Her salary, it's more than we can afford for her role, I explained. James finally looked up, his expression troubled. Mom said it was fine. She thinks Lisa will bring a lot to the table. I sighed, feeling as though I was speaking to a wall. The challenges at Sweet Sanctuary were escalating, and it was becoming harder to keep our sweet dream from soaring. Despite our agreement to discuss new hires together, especially regarding their salaries, James shrugged it off, as though it were insignificant. What's done is done. Mom has a good feeling about her, he remarked dismissively. Frustrated, I held back my response. Relying on good feelings wasn't going to balance our books. I left his office, feeling like I was the only one aware of the red flags while James and his mother paraded through the business blindfolded. I'd always been meticulous, double-checking, sometimes triple-checking, especially when it came to numbers. So when I found an envelope tucked away in the back of a filing cabinet while searching for a misplaced invoice, I opened it, assuming it was just another overlooked bill. But my heart sank when I saw what was inside. A document listing Sweet Sanctuary as collateral for a loan, the amount far beyond what our humble shop could justify. James, I called, entering his cluttered office with the papers in hand. He looked up, and for the first time in months, I saw a flicker of guilt in his eyes. What's this? I demanded. Oh, that's nothing. Just a small loan I took out for store improvements, he replied casually. Store improvements? I repeated, incredulous. This amount could renovate the store 9 times over. What did you really use it for? There was a long, tense pause. Finally, he spoke, carefully choosing his words. Look, I might have used some of it for the house. The one I've been fixing up for us. For us? I repeated, my voice sharp with disbelief. Or for your gadgets and whatever else you've been wasting money on. James stood up, his chair scraping back with the force of a judge's gavel. Yet all I felt was rising frustration. It's not like that, Karen. You don't understand. This is all going to pay off in the end. No, James, I said, shaking my head. Taking out a loan against the store without telling me. That's what I don't understand. How could you be so reckless? Before he could answer, Patricia stormed in, noticing the documents in my hand. What's all this? She demanded. James started to explain, but I cut him off, shoving the loan papers toward her. Did you know about this? I asked. Patricia barely glanced at the documents, dismissing them with a wave of her hand. Of course I did. James is just doing what's necessary for our future. And who are you to question him? You're just the help, after all. Her words stung, but they also ignited something in me. Just the help, I replied, my voice steady and firm. I've been keeping the store afloat while you two have been treating it like your personal bank account. James's face turned pale, and Patricia looked ready to erupt. You ungrateful little, she began, but I cut her off, surprisingly calm. What's ungrateful is not recognizing the hard work someone's putting into this business. What's foolish is risking everything for a house we don't even need. They were speechless, caught in their own lies and misdeeds. I left the room, the loan papers clutched in my hand like a pending judgment. Later that day, the kitchen table, usually reserved for casual meals, became the setting for a somber discussion. A council of war rather than a chat about a candy shop. James cleared his throat, avoiding my gaze. We need to talk about the store's future, he said. I sat down, folding my hands on the table, ready to confront the issues we had long ignored. As I sat there, facing the harsh reality of our situation, Patricia's demeanor grew stern. We need to be realistic, Karen. The The store isn't making enough to cover the debts. We have to find money somewhere." The way she said "we" made my alarm bells ring. It sounded like she was implying the responsibility fell on me. "What do you suggest?" I asked, keeping my composure. Her eyes flickered with a calculating coldness. "You have that inheritance from your parents. It could clear the debts and stabilize the store." I was taken aback, feeling like I was talking to a stranger, not the mother of the man I married. "You want me to use my parents' money, the money meant for my personal security?" I asked, my voice incredulous. James quickly jumped in. "It's not like you're doing anything else with it," he said. "And what about our security?" Patricia cut in sharply, her tone implying my inheritance should be treated as a family resource. I looked between them, my heart sinking. "I'm part of this family, but it feels like you only recognize that when you need something from me." James shifted uneasily. "It's not like that, Karen, but we're struggling here." I stood, my voice steady but disbelieving. "So you expect me to just hand over my future?" Patricia leaned in, pressing her point. "If you care about this family, yes?" I thought about the long hours and sleepless nights I'd spent trying to keep the shop afloat. "If I do this." The words felt heavier than I expected. "If I use my inheritance, I want 1/3 of the store. I want to be an official co-owner." The room went silent, then Patricia's laugh rang out, dismissive and cruel. "You? A co-owner? Don't be ridiculous. You're not business material." I stood up, the sound of my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Then find another way to cover your debts, because my inheritance is not your emergency fund." James' face was unreadable, but Patricia's flushed with anger. "You let this family business fail." "I've tried to save it," I said quietly but resolutely, "but I won't set myself on fire to keep you warm." That night, an unsettling feeling drew me back to Sweet Sanctuary. The shop was dark, as expected, but a faint light from the back office suggested otherwise. I pushed the door open, the usual comforting chime of the bell now feeling almost ominous. The sweet scent of candy, once soothing, now felt thick with deceit. As I neared the back, I heard murmurs from the office. I pushed the door fully open and saw James with his arms around Lisa, the new hire. She giggled at something he whispered. I stood frozen for a moment, then pushed the door open further. Their faces morphed from shock to guilt as they quickly sprang apart. "Karen," James stammered, straightening his shirt. "It's not what it looks like." "Really?" I replied, my voice cold. "Because it looks like I just caught my husband with his arms around another woman." Lisa fumbled with her hair, avoiding my gaze. "We were just going over inventory," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "At midnight, with the inventory in your arms." I raised an eyebrow. "Really?" James looked desperate. "Karen, please, you're blowing this out of proportion." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Am I?" A calm settled over me, chilling in its clarity. The trust and partnership I thought we had were gone. Everything was unmistakably clear. James stepped toward me, but I raised a hand to stop him. "Save it, James. I don't know what's worse, your cheating or the feeble lies." Lisa found her voice, faint and apologetic. "I'm sorry, Karen. I never wanted any of this to happen." I studied her, young, naive, tangled in the web of a man unable to own up to his mistakes. "You should be sorry," I said, and turned to James. "And you, James, should start job hunting." He objected immediately. "You can't fire her over this." I was unyielding. "I can and I will. Tomorrow, I'll be contacting a lawyer." James went pale. "Karen, please, let's discuss this." "There's nothing left to discuss," I interrupted sharply. "You've made your choices. Now you have to live with them." Without waiting for his reply, I walked out, my head held high as his pleas faded behind me. The following morning, bright sunlight contrasted sharply with the gloom of our household. Having spent the night at my rental property, I sat at the kitchen table when my phone buzzed. It was a message from James. Tempted to ignore it, I gave in to curiosity. It was a photo of a bank letter demanding immediate repayment. Below it, James had typed, "We need to talk. This is serious." I sighed, prepared for whatever awaited me. On my way. When I arrived at the shop, James and Patricia were already there, pacing nervously. Patricia noticed me first, her expression darkening. "Decided to show up, did you?" she snapped. I nodded, meeting her glare. "You wanted to talk." James handed me the letter, his face lined with anxiety. "The bank's on us hard. We could lose everything." I scanned the letter, unsurprised by the figures, but uneasy nonetheless. So what's your plan? Patricia shot me a glare. We wouldn't be in this mess if you just helped when we asked. Ignoring her, I turned to James. What are you going to do? He looked defeated, running a hand through his hair. I thought maybe you could cover it with your inheritance. I gave a bitter laugh. I told you, I'm not footing this bill without a stake in the business. Patricia stepped forward, a scowl on her face. You're being unreasonable, Karen. This is a family business. I met her challenge with forced calm. And where was this family when your son was mismanaging our funds and hiring his buddies for kicks? James opened his mouth to speak, then faltered, looking down. You don't get to play the family card only when it's convenient, I said. We'll need to figure something else out. James muttered, You'll have to then. Unexpectedly, Patricia smiled, but it wasn't pleasant. Fine, but if you're not helping, then you're out. We'll manage without you. You're fired. I stared at her for a long moment, letting the silence linger before matching her smile. Okay. Their astonishment was almost amusing. Just like that? James asked, incredulous. Just like that, I confirmed. I need you to understand. I've meticulously gathered evidence. I took photographs of your dealings with Lisa and kept a detailed log of every dime squandered. If you think you can dismiss me and bury this mess, you're sorely mistaken. Patricia's smile faltered, and she hissed, You wouldn't dare. Oh, but I would, I said. And as I leave, I'll take my hard-earned achievements with me. Let's see how you'll explain to the bank why the business is floundering without its real pillar. Months had passed since I last walked through the doors of Sweet Sanctuary. My life had found a new rhythm, paper rustling, the quiet hum of productivity, resolving challenges. I sat in my crisp new office, a world away from the chaotic storeroom of the confectionery. My phone rang, and Angela's name lit up the caller ID. She was the only connection I'd kept from that chapter of my life. Hey, Angela, what's new? I greeted her, a tinge of apprehension in my voice. I knew Sweet Sanctuary updates always stirred old memories. Haven't you heard? Angela's voice was mixed with pity and discomfort. The shop shut down last week. The bank foreclosed on it, and their house. A sense of unexpected relief washed over me. How are James and his mother coping? There was a brief pause. Not well, I'm afraid. They've moved in with his aunt. They're keeping a low profile. Thanks for letting me know, Angela. The news settled in, but then Angela added, Karen, everyone knew you were the lifeblood of that place. It just wasn't the same after you left. A small, sad smile touched my lips. Thanks for saying so. How about you? Have you found something new? Yes, I'm at a bakery downtown now. It's no Sweet Sanctuary, but it's a start. That's great to hear, Angela. You've always had a knack for baking. I'm sure you'll do well. We exchanged a few more words before ending the call. As I looked out the window at the bustling street below, my assistant knocked on my door. Your 4 o'clock appointment is here, she announced. Thanks, send them in, I replied, ready to shake off the last traces of nostalgia. A couple walked in, worry etched on their faces about their enterprise. As I stood to greet them, I felt energized by the new challenge. We've heard excellent things about you, Karen, the wife said as they took their seats. They say you're the top crisis manager around. I smiled, at ease with the recognition. I'll strive to live up to that. Now, tell me about your business, and let's explore how we can steer things back on track. As they detailed their issues, my mind buzzed with strategies. This was my domain now, where every problem had a remedy, and each challenge was a doorway to opportunity. Sweet Sanctuary, with its bittersweet recollections, lay behind me. Ahead was a path I had crafted for myself, one of resilience, redemption, and new beginnings. As our conversation continued, their anxiety transformed into hopeful smiles. They departed with renewed vigor, and I turned back to my desk, my spirit lighter than it had been in ages. The most rewarding victories often come after the toughest trials. The future was mine to shape, one deliberate step at a time.